All right, Coach, welcome. How's everything going down in Missouri, man?
Going well, man. Just doing the Memorial Day weekend thing and up here at my parents and kids are running around and just celebrating and having a good time and everybody's rolling with it. But yeah,
Nice.
things are good. How about
Good,
you?
good. Yeah, we're doing that. We got the same thing going here. We're all my family's gone, but we're gonna go hang out with my sister-in-law tomorrow, and then we're actually seeing everybody this upcoming weekend. So all the high school graduations, so that'll be fun. But yeah, weather's nice up here. I don't know what it's like down there for you guys. It's pretty nice here. It's not too hot and sun's shining, so that's all we can ask for.
Raining and cloudy here.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
usually that's usually how it works, right? We'll
yeah,
we'll probably we'll probably get that on 4th of July. That's kind of been the status quo for 4th of July, man. But
yeah.
did you guys now, do you guys I kind of this has been just with the time frame. Are you guys allowed spring ball in Missouri?
We are. It's a new thing, and it's kind of different because like the bigger schools, some of the smaller schools will do it, bigger schools will do it. A lot of the small schools kind of get stuck in baseball season and
Right.
track season and everything. But essentially how it works in Missouri is you get 2 weeks of spring ball, no pads, no
Okay.
anything, no helmets. I mean, it's literally a walkthrough for 10 days,
Yeah.
and so that's what you get. And then in Missouri, we go full tilt in the summer. You get 20 contact days in the summer, and
Okay.
that's usually what a lot of the smaller schools where I'm at. That's what we end up usually doing is just taking full advantage of the summer because you only have so many athletes, at a small
Sure.
place.
Sure. No, I get that. I've seen it both. I've heard the argument for both, obviously. Wisconsin, the state I'm in, is they just voted for unlimited contact days in the summer. So that's
Wow, that's
yeah, so
awesome.
it's gonna I don't know if that's necessary. I think there's gonna
It's
be
kind
some
of
people
yeah, it could be good and
yeah,
bad.
right? Like I think 20 so when I coached in Illinois, it was 25 contact days, which I think they've adjusted to 20 now to match Missouri. But I've also coached in like I coached in Tennessee where we did something with football every day. Like there was no like it was now we weren't always padded. It wasn't always um we did a lot of like walkthrough stuff, but still it was I mean it was a full from 8 to 1 p.m. essentially. We lifted, we ran, and we did some sort of football activity every day.
Yeah.
Um and so, I've seen it like I said, I've seen it kind of work both ways. I to me my sweet spot, 10 is like I think a good little number. I can get a lot done with 10. Like Wisconsin used to be 5, and so you really had to stretch those
Yeah.
5.
That 5 would be hard. 5 would be tough, like you said.
Right.
5 would be very tough.
Right. And so some of the people I know I'm friends with, we kind of said 10 would be really good because then you could kind of do 5 sort of walk through install days and then 5 practices, essentially, padded practices. But I've got a feeling with this unlimited contact days, there's going to be a lot more injuries this season than before. I wish someone would take some statistics on it and take some research, but I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot more injuries this year.
Especially at the beginning of the year, if you've
Yeah.
gone full tilt all summer. Yeah, that could be I could see where that could get out of hand pretty quickly, you know?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. But all right, well, let's get going here, man. I don't want to keep too much of your time. I want you to go enjoy the family and the rain, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, first question, talk to me about how, you've been in a few different spots, been at the collegiate level. Talk to me how the offensive line played a role in some of those schools you've been at, some of the better teams.
So, it's kinda like in my own personal journey, everything I've really done has been, defensive minded,
Hmm.
kind of the defensive side, except for one stop. And one stop I was at Northeastern State
Hmm.
in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, Division II school. And it was one of the things where I got out there thinking I was going to be the graduate assistant defensive line coach. That's kind of what was discussed, when
Yep.
I was looking at the job. And I get out there and they say, "Hey, you're going to be the tight ends and fullbacks coach." And I was like, "What?" And so it was one of the things where it was like, you're not gonna. What are you gonna do? Tell them no? Like you're a
Right.
GA, you're just hungry to get a job. Like you just want to break in, and so I, got there, and I had told the head coach, his name was Kenny Evans. I had said my goal one day is to be a defensive coordinator at any level. I just wanted to be a defensive coordinator.
Right.
And when I told him that, in his mind, that put me on the switch to the offensive side of the ball when I got there with him, because he said, if you want to be a defensive coordinator, you have to know how offensive line works. And
Yep.
so you're going to be working directly with the offensive line coach. Like last year, I was a graduate, but I still was coaching my own positions, got to have my own position meetings, but I was every day working with the offensive line coach in our scheme, and, breaking up and figuring out blocking, and breaking it all down, and what it was we were going to do week to week. So that, when I got there, man, that was like my big introduction into offensive line play, into teaching technique, and blocking, double team. I mean, just everything. It was a whole new world for me as far as being a coach.
Yeah.
So in that experience, man, like just having that 2 years of being a tight ends and fullbacks coach, and working with a guy named Mike Barella and another guy named Paul Lane. They were two great offensive line coaches. Getting to work with those guys and really have an understanding of breaking down all the blocking schemes
Right.
really opened up my eyes defensively, and I started to understand the game, a little bit more. Everything, how it is. You learn a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit more each day, and it's like the game gets slower and slower. So you start understanding it more and more. And so that, being there at that place in that time, really serves me in a very pivotal role as far as being a defensive minded person, getting swapped over to the offensive side, being in the trench. I mean, yeah, I was with the tight ends, but I was, we were working every day in the trenches. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
We were a part of all the blocking and everything. And, uh, but that experience really opened up my mind to the game and really set me on a course as to where I'm at today.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the argument. I've talked about it before on here. Um, there's a large number of guys that say if you ever want to be a good offensive coordinator, you need to coach on the defensive side of the ball. So it works both ways because it's just learning the game. It's learning how to you're learning how to attack the other side of the ball. That's all
Exactly.
that's all you're doing, and that's all the reason that people have you do that. So
and,
it
and
makes
just the
sense.
and just the intricacies that I didn't know. I mean, you play the game growing up, you get into coaching a little bit and
Hmm.
everything, and you always think you know, well, I've learned it. I've learned it, and now I know.
Right.
I must know everything, right?
Right.
Well, then the next day you wake up and you don't know anything at all. So you just keep
Right.
on, and it's just like, for me, it was such an eye opener as to, like, just like, the simple power play,
Hmm.
simple power play, the intricacies and the steps and everything about timing that I never really thought about, because we're defensive guys. Go attack, go get the ball,
Right.
splatter, just go, bull rush, and we're gonna make a swim move, and then
Right.
we're gonna go get the ball. But like being in that offensive side and being up front and really like learning how to look at a breakdown, true power, true counter, and like, how it looks, how a good pull is supposed to look, how
Right.
a good down block is supposed to look. And then on your defensive side, like for me, when I was learning all this, I always kept thinking, okay, well, if I'm coaching defense, this is what I would do to counteract. You know what I mean? Like, so you
Right.
start playing that game going back and forth. And that to me was it was huge for me
Sure.
in my
No, it make
experience.
yeah. It does. The game and the game's all connected. Like when you really get down to it, it's all connected somehow, somewhere, whether it's offense, defense, special teams. So, I mean, I've always said the more you know, the better off you're going to be in the long run, anyways.
Absolutely.
So, be versatile because it's gonna help you out in the long run. Uh,
Absolutely.
what? So obviously you talked about you were GA. You got your start coaching actually at the college level as a student assistant. Was
Hmm.
that Was that the big plan, or was that just something like, you took an injury, or you just didn't, you didn't play in college? Like, how did that whole situation get started?
I had literally like no plan. So it was one of those
Welcome to the club, man. It's all
yeah,
right.
I had literally no plan. I was going to college. I went to SEMO,
Hmm.
Southeast Missouri State Redhawks, and there was an ad for that they needed someone for like a student assistant, and it was to help with video. And
Okay.
I mean, I was just kind of a punk kid off the street, and walked in and met a guy named Chris Norris.
Hmm.
Uh, and Chris Norris was he was a special teams coordinator at SEMO at the time, but he had played at Nebraska, and he had played for Tom Osborne in the '90s, and then at SEMO at that time, it was like kind of like a mini. I don't want to say a mini Nebraska. It wasn't that, but the whole coaching staff had all come through Nebraska. So the head
Okay.
coach Tony Samuel, he had played at Nebraska. Offensive or defensive coordinator Tim McGuire had played at Nebraska. Linebackers coach had played at Nebraska. Receivers and DBs coach played at Nebraska. Like they were all Nebraska guys.
Right.
And so just getting into that room and like being with those people that played for Tom Osborne, that played for Frank Solich, that that knew how the game was supposed to be played, learning from them, man,
Right.
it was like that. Like I walked in, I said, I heard that, you guys need some help, need a student assistant. And he was literally like, there was no, it was what I call just the Nebraska way. They looked me up and down and they said, when can you start? And it was
Right.
like, it was like there's no prerequisites. It was like, hey, you like football? All right,
Right.
you can hang out with us. So it was like I started meeting those guys, and I so what I ended up doing was helping Norris with special teams and helping with video. That was and so crazy as it sounds, that was in 2009, and there was this new thing called huddle back then.
Yeah.
SEMO was one of the first to have huddle ever
Oh,
because of the connection to Nebraska,
okay.
because a Nebraska GA created huddle. With
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So he was on Bo Pelini's staff. So huddle was his big master's project, his
Yeah.
master's thesis. He was going to make a video tool that for football that would be work like an Excel spreadsheet with video capability. That was
Right.
his whole thing. Obviously, he doesn't coach football anymore. He's moved on to different things.
Yeah.
But that all started at Nebraska. Huddle started at Nebraska. So in '09 and 10, it was Nebraska, it was Michigan, it was New Mexico State, and it was Southeast Missouri State.
Wow.
We were the ones on huddle. And so I was like there at the cusp of that, learned that whole thing as it was coming out.
Hmm.
It was a totally different layout than it is now, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was coaching in 2009. I'm trying to remember what like original huddle looked like. I can't picture it.
it was so bare. It was like bare bone. Like it's kind of like huddle. They have huddle classic, now, but
Well, yeah, I'm a huddle classic guy. I
I'm
can't
huddle
use the
classic.
new.
I
Yeah.
can't use the new. I don't even know. Like I'll tell you, I was there at the start of it, and I can't use the new one. Isn't that
No,
sad?
neither can I.
Like I can't figure it out. But so learning that, like I said, I was there, and on the ground floor of that,
Yeah.
learning that system, learning how that video operating system worked, and then learning the special teams part, man, with Norris, and then just getting to sit in. I sat in on a lot of defensive meetings.
Hmm.
Tim McGuire, um, I mean, like I said, I'm naming all these people that just were so influential in my understanding of the game,
Hmm.
and really didn't have to be. Like they literally just took me in,
Sure.
and like I said, they just all of them were, some of them were from St. Louis, some were from New Jersey, they were from all over, but they had all been Nebraska guys.
Right.
And I just instantly felt like I had that Nebraska connection. You know what I mean? And just uh understanding the bigger world of the coaching world and just the
Hmm.
game of football.
Yeah. I mean, shoot. those guys were the best. I mean, for a
Yeah,
long time,
long time.
especially I mean, even the all three of those branches, like the Osborne branch, the Solich branch, the Pelini branch, like there's a lot of good coaches that came from there, and obviously it sounds like with your situation, a lot of good people too. So that's pretty neat that you were able to, and that's awesome. That's baffling that you were with Huddle at like the origination of
The
Huddle. Like,
origination of it. Yeah,
yeah,
it was like I said, it was all new because I remember, like people would use there was X's O's, uh, um, that was a video system.
yep.
Then otherwise, it was just like a lot of DVDs
I
and
mean, yeah.
VHS, and that's all it was.
I mean, I still remember driving to exchange DVDs. I mean,
DVD
like,
and having
uh,
a DVD tower. Remember that you had
yeah,
one that said the burner towers in the offices. You just
yes.
burn all the DVDs at once.
I mean, I'm a pack rat. So like I could probably go down to my basement right now and find about 200 DVDs and not even like of the teams I coached. It was just scout DVDs.
Out the random, yeah, just random
Yeah,
stuff.
that
I'm the
I
same way.
need to I need to maybe I'll see if I can get a Huddle account and start uploading them all to Huddle and just make a huge playlist. But no, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's again, that's like such a for a coach, I'm sure it was probably overwhelming at times, but it sounds like they were pretty accommodating and would take the time to answer questions if you had them, which all coaches, especially young coaches, first time coaching, we all ask a ton of, I mean, we all ask a ton of questions still. If you don't ask questions, then what are you doing? But that's pretty cool that those guys were there to kind of walk
And
you through it.
the good ones will be there to answer you. And that's
That's
I was lucky.
that's for sure. So I did that, you bounced around a little bit at that level. Did you find it difficult? I always ask this of guys that go from college to high school. Did you find it difficult kind of making that transition, or was it pretty seamless for you, or were there a few hiccups, I guess?
There was a few hiccups because like I went to SEMO, I got on as a student assistant, and then from there I spent a year at Missouri S&T
Yep.
as a graduate assistant. So that was in 2012. And then that's when I went out to Oklahoma to Northeastern State,
Right.
and that's when I moved over to the offensive side of the ball. So those were my three. So straight up, like I said, I was a student assistant, and I ended up getting a little bit of a check for that, even being a student assistant. Went to a GA role and then to another GA role. That was my first three jobs. Like
Right.
as an adult. So it was one of the things where when I went into high school, I other than going to high school, I had never coached in high school, and I was 26 years old, 27 years old. And so it was definitely an adjustment because I had to, get certified, went and got certified, and now you go from, I mean, and you know how it is. You coach college ball. It's one of those things where it's every day, no
Hmm.
matter what level you are, D3, D2, FCS, FBS. Everyone's trying to go for the whole
Hmm.
thing. NAIA. Everyone's trying to go for the whole thing. They want to win their conference. They want to win the national championship.
Right.
And if that's not your goals, then how competitive are you? What are you really doing?
Right.
And so being in that environment and just the daily grind of never knowing when you're going to stop. You know how it is, man. You go on the road, you play a game on Saturday, you get back on the road, it's 2 a.m. You're not going to bed.
Right.
You're going into the office, and you're the GA. You're breaking things down.
Yeah.
You're unpacking the bus, and so like you get used to that lifestyle a little bit, and then you just your whole deal is watching film. You're learning everything you can. You're like a sponge as a young coach, taking everything in, trying to separate good and bad, because everything you learn isn't always going to be good.
Right.
So you're trying to.
Oh yeah. There's
And
plenty of
so
lessons.
like
Yeah, there's plenty of lessons on what not to do in all of that. Yeah.
exactly. And so like when I got into high school, and then I was like in a class, I was in a classroom at first, and in a health room, and it was like it's totally different vibe.
Right.
It's different. Now you're responsible for these kids, and some of them don't care anything about football. Some of them do. They play for you. But you go from like you're just surrounded by football all day to you got to live in this real world for 8 hours and then you
Right.
go to football practice.
Right. It's there's some yeah, there are some definitely some jarring moments. But also there's some places too where football is still the king a little bit. You
Yes.
know, and you know, it's you still don't want to take away from obviously the academic piece of it. But there are some places, I mean there's places now in all over America where they hire football coaches and they're working in the
Absolutely.
building and they're only football coaches. That's all they do. They
Yeah.
get, you know,
And
they they
I'm a believer in that, honestly. I believe that our game is important.
yeah.
I believe that and not to say that other sports aren't. It's always hard to make this argument or make this point with guys that are basketball coaches or
Hmm.
baseball coaches, track coaches, whoever. It's that football makes everybody better. If the
Hmm.
football goes well, I knew a guy that he won 9 or ended up winning at the end of his career, won more state. So altogether he won like 12 state championships in basketball.
Hmm.
He would never allow his basketball players to touch a basketball during the fall. He wanted them to play football.
Yeah.
If they weren't playing football, they were going to be doing off season with him, not touching basketball. They were going to be running. It was,
Right.
like, and so his whole thing was he was going to push you towards football because his saying was, as goes the football, so goes the basketball.
Sure. Oh yeah, no doubt.
Football, if football is successful, and he truly, and he would tell me this, he wholeheartedly believed this. If the football team is successful, the basketball team will follow. It just is
Yeah.
hand in hand. And then the baseball team will, and then the track team will. And so it just is a tone setter and such a great game, and
Yeah.
I just I love it. I could talk about it all day.
No, yeah, I was telling, I can't remember who I was just talking to about that. It must have been either another podcast or an interview or something I had, but um, one of the principals I worked for in Tennessee, his big thing was he would talk to the football team at the beginning of the school year and basically say, as you guys set the tone on the school year.
Exactly.
If you guys have a good year, it's going to be a good school year. It's going to, things are going to go better.
You
Classes are going to
guys
be
act
easier.
right. If you
Right.
guys act right, everybody else will follow.
Right. So
Not
it
everybody, but most of
right,
them will.
most people will, but it's funny. It's funny that yeah, it's he he would set the tone with those guys and
Yep. It's the
tell them
truth.
how it was, but um I gotta ask you about because obviously I do my research a little bit and I noticed that you have your own podcast that you've done some episodes with. What the heck's the double eagle flex defense and how did that where did that come from and why did you how did you start your podcast on that? What's the origin story for that?
Man, you got some time because I could talk double eagle flex. Man,
Give me the abridged version. Give me the abridged version.
I learned that so at my stop in S&T.
Okay.
So I worked for a guy named David Brown.
Yep.
Once again, it's funny how everything connects. David Brown worked for Frank Solich at the University of Ohio,
Yep.
right? David Brown did not know me when I applied for the job at S&T, but one of
Yep.
my references was a Nebraska guy, Tony Samuel, the head coach of Southeast Missouri State. So all he's got to do is make one phone call, right? And then so all that Nebraska connection. So David Brown was from South Central LA. He was a football player and played at Cal Poly and kind of was a journeyman going around. One of his stops just so happened to be Ohio University, working for Frank Solich. So it's funny how just that little Nebraska connection ended up
Right.
getting me to the next place, and I learned about the double eagle flex defense. So the double eagle flex, you ever heard of the days of Desert Swarm,
Yeah.
University of Arizona?
Yeah.
That's double eagle flex.
Okay.
So, that was Dick Tomey and Larry McDuff and Rich Ellerson. Rich Ellerson was the one who taught it to David Brown when they were at Cal Poly when he played. So he played in the double eagle flex system, and he loved it, and he implemented it at S&T when we were there. And as a Division II school, S&T is a academic school. It's an engineering school,
Right.
very high academic standards, very tough to get into. So football, just like what recruiting the best football players wasn't high on their priority list. They wanted to
Right.
recruit the best students, and that's just the way it was. With the with the putting in of the double eagle flex defense, we were able to. I mean, we had crazy numbers. We ended up setting the for the longest time we had the Division II sack record. We had over 50 sacks on the season. We had we led the nation in Division II and turnover percentage, turnover
Hmm.
ratio. And it was just a ball hawking defense, and we were taking undersized kids at a Division II level, and we were just flying and beating these other offenses that couldn't block us, couldn't, and everything that we were doing was different. It was contrarian to what they would normally see in a 4-4 defense or a 4-3, 4-2-5. Because with the double eagle flex, what you do is you have flex linebackers, and they're moving around all the time. And
Hmm.
so it's a 3 down front, but you're almost all the time sending 4. You could send 5, you might send 6, but nobody ever knows where it's coming from. And it like I said, it's contrarian. It's like when you play 8 spread teams all season, and then you got to play a single wing team. Well, everything changes, right?
Right.
Everything changes. So from an offensive standpoint, the double eagle flex defense looks totally different, and the rules that it has within it makes it easy for high school kids to just fly around and play. And my biggest thing with high school kids, especially where we're at in the Boot Hill, we have a lot of issues in our area as far as opportunity and not a lot of job opportunity, just not a lot of uh, good things,
Sure.
within our communities. We struggle a lot every day, just trying to keep schools together and keep schools open, and but we have great schools within our communities and do a lot of good things. But when I started getting into the high school level, I started realizing that the old school approach of running 4-3 and running 4-2-5s and running 4-4s and doing all that around here, it just wasn't effective.
Sure.
So I went back into my bag,
Hmm.
and started and going back to the double eagle flex and learn. And when I was in it, I only coached helped coach the defensive line, so I didn't know everything always that was happening on the back end. But getting back in touch with David Brown, and he's the guy that I consider to be my greatest mentor for the last 13, 14 years. He has guided me, and still to this day is able to answer any questions I have. I mean, I still call him when I'm game planning, just because
Right.
I'm using this defense, and he just knows all the ins and outs about it. But when it was created, it's kind of funny. It was made in Canada with a 12-man game.
Okay.
So Rich Ellerson was in Canada, and with the legendary coach Don Matthews, the CFL Hall of Famer, and it was adapted for to use in a 12-man game. And Rich Ellerson brought it back to the states, developed it into the 11-man game, and it's what you see now is what it is and what it was in the '90s. Desert Swarm. There's only a handful of schools now really that run it. Mayville State, little NAIA school up in
Okay. Yeah.
they run double eagle flex. Seton Hill over there in Western Pennsylvania. Me,
Okay.
me, and their defensive coordinator, we both learned it from David Brown. But it's a very niche defense, and it's one of the jokes that David would always say to us, and same thing to Kevin May over at Seton Hill. He'd tell us, you don't mess with grandma's recipe. Don't mess with the secret sauce. Don't change anything. Don't change
Right.
rules. The rules are there for you. It's all built in. And so, me and Kevin, we talk about it. We've talked about it and just through Twitter and everything else, how it's funny. We learned it from him, and we're doing the exact same things because
Right.
we don't change the sauce.
Hey, you're right though. It's like the air raid, right? Don't
don't
mess with it if it's
don't
yeah.
mess with it. If it's there, it works.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some dig and see if I can find some film on that because that's I've heard of Desert Swarm, because that's actually I was a that's like one of the first Sports Illustrateds I can remember reading.
But they were
They
all
were on the
like
cover. The
cactus. Yeah.
yeah the college football preview, and so I was always a Teddy Bruschi fan, and
Yep.
so I'm gonna have to see if I can find some of that. That's pretty cool.
Oh
So that's
man,
just
when we get off here, I got some links I could give you.
yeah, shoot, you have to shoot me some for sure. That's interesting. So that's just something that you've kind of you fall in love with that, and that's
Yeah.
that's cool though. It's you know what you are, right?
Yeah.
That's what wherever you go, that's what you're gonna be. So that's it's
Wherever I go, it's what it is, and
yeah,
it's kind of funny now, just because being in the boot heel of Missouri, all of our communities are there's a bunch of different small little towns, but we're all kind of like one big town. We all know
right.
each other, and so like this just recently, I got hired uh, to be a defensive coordinator at Charleston High School here in Charleston, Missouri, and the kids already knew coming in. They're like, "All right, coach. So what's?" They're like, "What's the flex?" We know we've heard the flex, but
Yeah.
now we need to know what it is because
Yeah.
because they knew they were going to be running it.
Yeah.
So it was
That's
kind of
cool.
funny.
That's cool. That's pretty cool that they know about it. So I'm sure they're chomping at the bit to get after it though. So that's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
Well, they were just they all want to know the rules, like
Yeah.
because we've made it like so secretive. We always say like, I mean, my first team meeting that I had with them, I said the first thing that was told to me about the defense is we took the from Fight Club, obviously, but we said first rule of Flex Club is there is no Flex Club.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the rules. We don't tell anyone else our rules.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know what it is that we're doing, and it's just kind of one of the things that's kind of kept secret.
You're like the slot T, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But all right, well, all right. Last question I got for you, man. Then I'll get you out of here because I'm gonna keep you too long. If you could put a Mount Rushmore together of offensive linemen, this is an offensive question. Offensive
Okay.
linemen you've coached, you've played ball with maybe back in the day, or you're a fan of. Who's on that 5-man offensive line?
Ross Dvorak was a center at Northeastern State. That's number one. Uh, Two guards. Let me see here. I've got uh Brian Curry, guy at Southeast Missouri.
Okay.
He was a All American guard. I'm gonna go with Frank Knights, another guy at Southeast Missouri. He was another All American guard in 2010 when we ended up winning the conference. I'm gonna go those two. I'm gonna go Joe Thomas at tackle. I
Okay.
mean, you got to, right?
You
I
got
mean,
to. Yeah.
you can't. There's nobody else. I just
No.
don't think. And then my other tackle, I'm gonna go with. Let me see here. My last all timer at tackle has to be guy that another guy I coached at NSU, Michael Bowie. He ended up
Okay.
playing for the Seahawks and won a Super Bowl.
I was gonna say that name sounds familiar. Yeah, I
Yep.
remember that name does sound familiar.
Yep.
Nice.
And
You
got himself a ring.
hey, good for him, man.
Yeah.
The Joe Thomas, I just joked about my last guest down here. We talked about Joe Thomas, and I said
I
if
was
I
trying to stay away from the
no
pros
no
because
no,
it's easy. It's
you're
easy to
good,
make that
man.
your top five, but you can't leave Joe Thomas out of there.
Well, so I joked. I said if I go back and listen, I bet he's on more than 50% of the guys I've asked that question to. So it's
Absolutely.
yeah,
You know, the 10,000 snaps, man. That
I
just
know.
it's
It's
it
wild.
won't be beat. I don't
No,
think it'll ever be beat.
no. All right, man. Well, do me a favor before you get out of here. Drop your Twitter handle and any other information you need the listeners to know.
All my handles, my Twitter handle, TikTok, Instagram is all at Coach Ray 573. So if you want to follow me on anything like that, it's all the same.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate you, man, coming on here, hopping on. Enjoy the rest of your holiday, buddy, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more before the season starts. And I want to learn some more about this double flex. So you're gonna have to talk to me sometime soon.
Hey, sounds good, man. I'll talk about it anytime.
All right, buddy. I'll
All
talk to
right,
you later, man.
later.